Biomed Nexus Daily Updates, your essential biotech, medtech, and pharma recap. No noise, just what matters. TLDR AstraZeneca and Ionis reported a Phase 3 failure for Wainua in ATTR cardiomyopathy, a rare stumble for AstraZeneca, and one that reopens the debate over whether gene silencers can compete with stabilizers in a market BridgeBio and Pfizer now dominate. Hansoh's GSK-partnered ADC hit its overall survival endpoint in a pivotal Phase 3 in small cell lung cancer. More Chinese science delivering 4 days before the congressional deadline. The FDA approved Padcev plus Keytruda for muscle-invasive bladder cancer, turning the EV-304 data we covered at ASCO into a label. MedTech M&A hit $75, 73B in the first half, the highest first half total since 2022. The FDA rejected the HLB and Hengrui liver cancer regimen for a third time, reportedly over manufacturing inspection issues at a Chinese facility. Executive takeaway: AstraZeneca does not miss often, which is what makes the Wainua failure worth sitting with. The drug, developed with Ionis, is a gene silencer designed to knock down production of the transthyretin protein that builds up and stiffens the heart in ATTR cardiomyopathy. It flunked Phase 3. That result matters beyond one company because it reopens a genuine scientific argument. The ATTR market is currently owned by stabilizers, drugs that lock the TTR protein into a stable shape rather than reducing how much of it gets made. Pfizer's tafamidis built the category. BridgeBio's Atrabie has been taking share and just posted data showing it preserves kidney function in a way Jefferies called distinct from others in the space. The knockdown approach was supposed to be the next generation. Wainua's failure suggests that either the mechanism is weaker than believed in the heart, or that stabilizers are simply harder to beat than the field assumed. For BridgeBio and Pfizer, this is very good news. For anyone building a TTR knockdown program, it is a real problem. Now the week ahead. Friday is July 17th, the deadline for Merck, AbbVie, Lilly, Pfizer, and BMS to answer the House Select Committee on China about their clinical trials there. That is the story we have tracked since the probe opened, and this is the payoff week. What arrived over the weekend only sharpens it. Hansoh's ADC, partnered with GSK, hit its overall survival endpoint in a pivotal Phase 3 in small cell lung cancer. Another piece of Chinese science delivering exactly the kind of result that made the industry pile into China licensing in the first place. And separately, the FDA rejected the HLB and Hengrui liver cancer regimen for a third time, reportedly citing problems found during an inspection of a Chinese manufacturing facility. Both stories land in the same week. Congress wants answers. One shows why the industry will not walk away. The other shows exactly the kind of vulnerability the skeptics point to. Watch Friday. Read, full analysis, cardiovascular AstraZeneca's gene silencer failed in ATTR, and that is a gift to BridgeBio and Pfizer. AZN, T-Ions. BBIO, PFE AstraZeneca and Ionis reported disappointing Phase 3 results for Wainua, eplontersen, in transthyretin-mediated amyloid cardiomyopathy, according to the Pharma Letter and BioWorld. The failure has reopened the debate over the synergy, or lack of it, between knockdown drugs and stabilizers in treating the disease. ATTR cardiomyopathy is a progressive condition in which misfolded TTR protein accumulates in the heart. Two strategies compete: stabilizers, which lock the protein into a stable form, and knockdown drugs like Wainua, which reduce how much protein the body makes. Stabilizers currently own the market, led by Pfizer's tafamidis, and increasingly challenged by BridgeBio's Atrabie, which just posted data Jefferies described as showing a distinct kidney benefit. Wainua's failure undercuts the theory that knockdown is the superior next-generation approach, and it removes a serious threat from the competitive picture for the incumbents. Chinese science delivered again 4 days before Congress wants answers. GSK team, Hansoh Pharma, said its GSK-partnered ADC risvotatug rezetecan, met its primary endpoint of overall survival in a pivotal Phase 3 trial in small cell lung cancer, according to the pharma letter. Fierce Biotech noted that Hansoh's ADCs continue to justify GSK's decision to make them priority programs. Small cell lung cancer is an aggressive disease with few good options, so an overall survival win is meaningful. The timing tells the story. Friday is the July 17th deadline for Merck, AbbVie, Lilly, Pfizer, and BMS to respond to the House Select Committee on China about their clinical trials there. Every week that Chinese assets keep reading out positive, the industry's case for staying engaged gets stronger. But the same week brought a counterpoint. The FDA rejected the HLB and Hengrui liver cancer regimen for a third time, reportedly citing issues from an inspection of a Chinese manufacturing facility. That is precisely the vulnerability critics point to. Both realities are true at once, and Friday is when the 5 named companies have to argue their side of it in writing. Oncology. The bladder cancer data we covered at ASCO just became a label. PFE, Astellas, MRKT the FDA approved, Pfizer, and Astellas' Padcev, enfortumab vedotin, plus Merck's Keytruda as neoadjuvant and adjuvant treatment for muscle-invasive bladder cancer, regardless of whether patients are eligible for cisplatin chemotherapy, according to the pharma letter. This is the EV304 regimen we covered from ASCO, where it produced a 55.8% pathologic complete response rate versus 32.5% for chemotherapy. Moving an ADC plus checkpoint inhibitor combination into the perioperative setting, before and after surgery, expands it into a much larger patient population than the metastatic setting where it started. China's regulator also accepted the filing for the same regimen. Padcev generated $1.94 in 2025 and is now one of Pfizer's top 10 medicines. Separately, NICE issued final draft guidance rejecting routine NHS use of Amgen's Lumakras in previously treated KRAS G12C lung cancer. It is another blow to the first-generation KRAS drugs, following Friday's Krazati setback in colorectal cancer, and Genentech's divarasib beating the approved standard last week. MedTech M&A quietly had its best first half since 2022. MedTech mergers and acquisitions reached 73B in the first half of 2026, the highest first half total since 2022's 120. 4B and well above every other year in BioWorld's records. June alone contributed $12. 21B, a sharp rebound from May's quiet $1. 51B, the medtech deal wave has run alongside the biopharma boom without getting the same attention, but the drivers are similar: strong balance sheets, pressure to add growth, and a large field of scaled targets. If you cover devices, diagnostics, or tools, the consolidation running through your sector is as intense as anything happening in drugs. Read full analysis, Biomed, Nexus Pro. Institutional intelligence. Brief, knockdown versus stabilizer. Wainua settles it. For now, ATTR cardiomyopathy has been one of the most commercially attractive cardiovascular markets in the industry, and the scientific question underneath it has been genuinely open until now. The disease is caused by transthyretin protein misfolding and depositing in heart tissue. There are 2 ways to attack it. Stabilizers bind the TTR protein and hold it in its correct shape so it does not misfold. Pfizer's tafamidis pioneered this and built a multi-billion-dollar franchise. BridgeBio's Atrobi entered as the challenger and has been gaining ground, with recent Jefferies commentary highlighting a kidney function benefit it called distinct from others in the class. Knockdown drugs take the other route. Instead of stabilizing the protein, they use RNA targeting to reduce how much TTR the liver produces in the first place. Less protein made, less protein to misfold. On paper, it is the more elegant approach and the field widely expected knockdown to eventually displace stabilizers. Wainua's Phase 3 failure is a serious blow to that thesis. It does not prove knockdown cannot work, but it does suggest the approach is harder to translate into cardiac benefit than the biology implied. The debate BioWorld flagged about whether knockdown and stabilizers are synergistic or simply redundant now tilts toward the view that stabilization is doing the heavy lifting, the read for investors and BD teams. BridgeBio and Pfizer just had a major competitive threat weakened, and Atraby's growth trajectory looks safer than it did a week ago. Anyone running a TTR knockdown program has to explain why their molecule succeeds where Wainua failed, and that is a much harder conversation than it was on Friday. Watch for whether other knockdown programs quietly deprioritize the cardiomyopathy indication and retreat to polyneuropathy, where the approach has been more clearly effective. What the five say on Friday, the House Select Committee's deadline lands Friday. Here is what we expect and what would actually surprise us. Expect all five to respond in writing, on time, and in detail. The letters will emphasize three things: rigorous ethical review and informed consent at every trial site, robust data protection and IP safeguards, and full compliance with all applicable US and Chinese law. They will note, correctly, that the committee explicitly said it found no evidence of wrongdoing. None will concede anything. None will announce a change in strategy. Expect no new China licensing deals announced by any of the five between now and Friday. The optics would be terrible, and general counsels will have made that call weeks ago. Note that AstraZeneca, which is not among the named five, signed 2 China deals last week alone. That contrast is the tell what would surprise us. If any of the five announced a voluntary pullback from trial sites in Xinjiang or at military-affiliated hospitals, that would signal they see real regulatory risk coming rather than political theatre. If the committee escalated to subpoenas or a public hearing with CEOs in the chair, it would mean the letters were an opening move rather than the whole play. And if a major China licensing deal from anyone, named or not, landed on the deadline itself, it would be a deliberate signal that the industry has decided the probe has no teeth. Our base case remains what we have said since June. The deals already signed are safe. New deals continue at a rising political cost. The friction gets priced and paid, but Friday is the first real test of whether that red holds, and we will cover it live. MedTech's quiet consolidation, MedTech M&A hitting 75, 73B in the first half, the best since 2022, deserves more attention than it has gotten. The biopharma deal wave has dominated coverage, but the device, diagnostics, and tools sectors are consolidating just as aggressively. The drivers overlap with pharma, balance sheets are strong, organic growth is hard to find in mature device categories, and the technology shifts underway, particularly in AI-enabled diagnostics, surgical robotics, and continuous monitoring, favor scale players who can absorb innovation rather than build it. Merck KGaA buying Biotechna for $11. 3B, which we covered in June, is the clearest example of where this goes. That was not a device deal, it was a life sciences tools deal, and it reflects the same logic. The companies supplying the picks and shovels to drug developers are strategically valuable, and there are only so many of them. What to watch next? Diagnostics is the most fragmented remaining segment, and the one where AI is changing the competitive picture fastest. Expect more consolidation there, and expect the large, diversified players to keep buying capability rather than developing it. If you are running a mid-sized diagnostics or tools company with a differentiated technology, the strategic interest in your business is higher right now than it has been in 4 years. Catalyst calendar date event tickers Friday. July 17 Palmer responses due to House China trials. Probe MRK, ABBV, LLY, PFE, BMY July. 31 Section 232 Pharma tariffs, effective, large companies. Multiple August 2026 Replimune RP1, FDA response, Ripple August 22 Capricorn, Duramio PDUFA adcom pending, Caprolate, July FDA Advisory Committee expected on Capricorn, Duramio Capr Imminent Revolution Medicines, CNPV filing RVM Diminent Lilly, Foundeo T2D filing under CNPV LLYQ3, 2026 Revolution, Direxon Racib approval projected Truist, RVM DQ3, 2026 Unicurie, Huntington's gene therapy under review, Curie Q3, 2026 Regan XBIO, Duchenne gene therapy, BLA filing RGNX Q3, 2026 GSK Nuvalent close expected GSK Q3, 2026 ABVI Apogee, close expected ABB Q3, 2026 Vertex Crinetics, close expected VRTX Q3, 2026 Ipsen Cartos and Ipsen Memo, closes expected IP in Q3, 2026 Merck KGaA Biotech and close expected MKKGY 2026 Idasamtinibi and Niladalkibi PDUFAs ROS1 ALK GSK NUVLH2 2026 Merck SAK TMT global filing expected MRKH2 2026 Foundeo T2D regulatory action expected LLYH2 2026 Ajax registrational trial initiation expected LLY 2026 Triumph H2 and Triumph H3 readouts Rete True Tide LLY Acept 19 Ultragenics UX111 PDUFA Sanfilippo Type A Rare Sept 29 Section 232 Pharma Tariffs effective all others multiple deck 2026 Mineraliz Lorundrostat PDU FHAM LIAS 2027 Rita True Tide launch anticipated BMO LIDEC 7 Lilly Investment Community meeting LLY AstraZeneca's heart drug failed and handed BridgeBio and Pfizer a win. Chinese science keeps delivering right as Congress demands answers. And the bladder cancer data we covered at ASCO is now a label. Friday is the July 17th deadline. That is the week. What are you watching? Reply to this email. Visit the Pro Hub read. Full article is your company listed in the Biomed Nexus directory. 2,104 companies across 14 categories claim or upgrade your listing. Sponsorship slots for 2026 are limited. See packages and pricing. New Biomed Nexus signals weekly sales intelligence for life sciences BD teams. Learn more